Serious people of Reddit, what's your, if I'm going down I'm taking you with me. Story? I was teaching kids once how to climb on an outdoor wall. There was once kid who was quite large and unfit and didn't want to climb, just belay. Eventually kids were getting tired and less were wanting to climb, and a kid had asked me to show them how to do a particular line, so I asked the bigger kid to belay me so he would feel involved still. Everything went fine until bringing me back down, where he left me 5 centimeters from the ground so I couldn't stand myself back up. I asked him nicely to let me down, told him the risks of leaving a climber hanging in a harness, etc. He still wouldn't let me down. After about 10 minutes I got pissed off with being patient and nice, so I pulled myself against the wall, out my feet up, and threw myself at him hard enough to tackle him. We both ended up pretty hard on the ground, but taught the little to listen next time. He also got left out of the next activity, which was a really fun high ropes course that all the other kids loved. I once worked for a startup company, and they missed one of my paychecks. It wasn't a gigantic deal to me because they were a bit strapped for cash and we had a big release coming soon, and I was decently paid anyway, so I just said it. They then fired me 2 days before release, making it sound like I had been inadequate despite zero indication from them that I was such before that day. So I made the proper legal arrangements to recoup my missing paycheck and told them I'd be going to labor and industry. I had already filed a complaint, because if they were going to fire me after I worked 70 hours a week for over a month to try and meet their deadline, out of nowhere, I sure as wasn't going to cut them the slack of an entire paycheck. I got my paycheck. They went out of business because they were corrupt and had been misusing investor funds for years before this, unbeknownst to me, and I laughed my way to the bank. Super simple, but I am notorious in my friend group of having a fear of water. I'm okay in pools since you can, hopefully, see the bottom, but even shallow lakes, rivers and oceans are a no-go for me. Some friends ended up renting a boat and wanted to take it out on the lake and begged me to come out. I kept telling them no way in hell would I ever willingly go out and sit in the middle of a lake. Finally I caved because I do know. They were friends and really wanted me to go. Someone said it could really help me face my fears. Even though I didn't plan on getting in the water, I'm not going to wear jeans to the sunny beach, so I left my wallet, keys, and phone in the car. Within 10 minutes of getting to the middle of the lake, Buddy, who suggested I face my fears, and I think his brother, asked me if I got the time. I shrug and tell them I left my phone back in my car. They both lunge at me and start throwing me overboard. I latch on for dear life and fight as if the river is lava, because to me it essentially is. I eventually realize I'm 100% going over and there is nothing I can do except let go of the railing I was gripping onto and instead grab them both as I pulled back and forced all 3 of us into the water. Getting back on the boat was easy. It had a little ramp and ladder for climbing in / out, and you can bet your ass I was the first climbing back up. The brothers got mad at me because they had their phones in their pockets and I ruined them. But everyone quickly pointed out that they pushed me in the water knowing I hated it and that they deserved it. They argued that they intentionally tried to make sure I didn't have anything electronic on me, but everyone shut them down. They were allowed back on the boat when they apologized. My friend apologized and I actually did chip in to help him get a new phone later, but his brother swam back to shore and got even more upset and demanded I help him with his new phone since I helped his brother. But he didn't feel bad or think he did anything wrong, so that guy. When I worked as a case manager as an MHMR, we had a new department supervisor come in and she was the worst. Every single person but myself and another case manager quit within the month of this woman starting. I really liked my job and it was also my internship site for my master's degree, so I needed to stay employed there. Since so many people quit, this lady got permission to hire, and it soon became obvious that she wanted to get rid of anyone she hadn't hired and have a department full of people she had personally chosen. Surprise, surprise, most of her hires were just like her. On top of being an awful human, she also had very little background in mental health and gave truly awful supervision when it came to clients and getting them the services they needed. Since I wasn't a part of the people she had hired, I knew she would try to get rid of me, so I made sure to document everything. Anytime I staffed a client with her, I would document her advice in that person's chart as well as the actions I took due to her advice. I also kept a detailed paper trail and would email her questions about policy so that I'd have record of her answers, which usually were the opposite of what our policy actually was. She even started walking to my desk to verbally give me answers to the questions I sent via email, and I'd have to make up some excuse as to why I needed her answer in an email. Like I would tell her a parent or client had asked and I wanted to be able to give them a verbatim answer. I could tell she hated it. Anyway, several months later, I staffed a client with her who I believed needed to be hospitalized and wanted to run it by her first as she demanded. The kid was homicidal and impulsive, which is a recipe for disaster. She disagreed that this kid needed hospitalization and told me to refer the client to another agency because apparently the client was too high risk for us but didn't need to be hospitalized. I tried to get her to agree to just calling crisis to her, but she denied that as well. I documented what she told me to do and referred out. Well, literally a day later, this kid brings a gun to school and gets in a ton of trouble obviously. Thankfully he was stopped as soon as he stepped through the metal detectors. Mom is pissed that my agency just referred him out and didn't get him the help he needed, and a day later he plans to shoot up his school. My supervisor's supervisor is pissed as this is a PR nightmare and comes down on my supervisor, but since I was the direct care staff assigned to this client, my supervisor blamed it all on me. I ended up getting fired for my negligence. However, the higher-up of course carefully went through this kid's records and saw all of my documentation regarding the awful decisions my supervisor had made, which lead the higher-up to investigate even more. Basically there was Medicaid fraud being committed, this lady was lying about her mileage and being reimbursed way more than she should, and all this other lovely stuff. So she was fired as well. I was asked to come back, but that place and its corruption. When I was in university I did a 6-month exchange program in Spain. I took 4 classes while I was there and all had an equivalent credit at my university in Canada. I was getting A's in all of my classes except one class where I was really struggling, and getting a failing grade on an assignment in that class finally broke me. The prof for this class was the worst. It was an intermediate Spanish class and he was marking us like he thought we should all be writing Shakespeare. Not only that, but how he told us to complete assignments vs how he marked them would be completely incongruent. He expected us to be doing things that he never taught us, and he should not have been expecting in the first place from an intermediate Spanish class. I realized it wasn't just my problem when the girl from France, whose Spanish was far better than anyone else in the class, started crying one day after she got an assignment back and begging to understand why she was marked so poorly. He just pointed at her assignment like that was the only explanation required and then ignored her after that. There was no way to drop the class or switch into another because of the way it was built into the exchange program, so I decided I would start emailing the teacher constantly after he gave us assignments, clarifying every little point, coming back with follow-up questions to try and figure out what the hell it was he actually wanted from us, spending way more time on assignments than they deserved. That way if I failed I would have this record showing how hard I was working in the class to bring to administration if I needed to fight it, and all the discrepancies between how he provided assignments vs how he marked them. A couple of days before the final exam, teacher evaluation forms came around and I could tell by how long it took all of us to turn them in that I wasn't the only one in the class unloading on this guy. This was his first semester teaching at the university, so if his teacher evaluations didn't go well he wouldn't be invited back. If I failed this class then at least that wouldn't be doing this to someone else next semester. We get our final marks a week later and I've managed to pull a C out of my grade, just squeaked by. Then with final marks dispersed he's allowed to see his teacher evaluations. He sent an email to the entire class that night and lost his friggin' mind. We're talking sections with all caps, multiple exclamation marks, telling us how stupid we all are and how we don't know what we're talking about. He's the greatest teacher alive and we're all just bad students. Complete meltdown. The next morning I found another email, from the university this time, stating that professor is no longer with the university and will not be welcome back again, followed by numerous apologies regarding his behavior. I inquired about our grades in light of what happened, but I guess they weren't that apologetic because they refused to change them. Go figure.